In this video, I'll be showing you one of the MCP server provided by Microsoft. So this is all about Microsoft Learn Docs MCP server. It is a cloud hosted service that provides real-time access to official Microsoft documentation through the MCP server. MCP server is a model context protocol server that adds trusted and up-to-date learn content as a context to your language model. So if you have a different language model and if you want to extend that language model capability, you can use the MCP tools, MCP server tools to augment that knowledge base. Now, what this specific MCP server does is it allows you to establish that connection with the content already available within Microsoft Learn documentation. It's a remote MCP server that uses streamable HTTP. Now, clients like GitHub, Copilot, VS Code can connect with this particular endpoint. How to install the Microsoft Learn Docs MCP server? You need to connect to the learn.microsoft.com/API/MCP, and then MCP servers can be configured at the user level and at the workspace level. So once you connect this, MCP Learn Docs MCP server will be installed. You can try out by testing it with a specific prompt. And if you do not get the desired result, you may need to update some sort of an instruction, which I will guide you shortly. Now, Microsoft Learn Docs MCP Server it enables that semantic search across various documentation, be it Microsoft Learn, Azure documentation, Microsoft 365 documentations. It ensures your AI assistant has access to the authoritative, up to date information. So, sometimes when you use llms are time bound, or maybe it is like, say, time, it has that time cutoff for that specific knowledge or information. So if you use a llm and that has a time cutoff for October 2024, then you will not have this latest information. But with Microsoft Learn Docs MCP server, you will be always getting those latest information whenever you ask that MCP server. It is useful for rapidly changing updated libraries or use cases, and it solves a problem for coding assistants as well. Because sometimes when you use coding assistant, we do not want the coding assistants to have that knowledge, which is pretty much old. Things are rapidly changing, so if you want to have the correct information or the up to date information, it is always advisable to use this MCP server. Simple thing to install, you need to choose the type of MCP server to add. Now, in this case, we will use the method of HTTP or HTTP server sent events. You connect to a remote HTTP server that implements the MCP protocol. It will point to this URL learn.microsoft.com/API/MCP. And if required, you may need to specify the instructions as well. So let's jump into the demo. So we have a bunch of documentation which are currently already available as a part of learn.microsoft.com. So you can have a look into that. Get started with the Microsoft Learn Docs MCP server. It will give you that instructions on how to configure in VS Code. So it will give you all this information. You can set an instructions, and then there's another sort of documentation which talks about the overview of Microsoft Learn Docs server. Now remember, this URL is important. So let's copy this URL. Learnmicrosoft.com API MCP. It will give you the availability and pricing. This is publicly available and offered under the terms of Microsoft API terms of use. It's a free, there's no charge to use this MCP server. And there are few set of limitation. The MCP server contains publicly available documentation. It doesn't contain content from training modules, learning path, instructor-led courses, and exams at this particular point of time. The underlying knowledge service refreshes incrementally per content update and completely once a day. Updates to the MCP server will be communicated via updates to Learn Docs MCP server release notes. Then we have developer reference documentation, how to access the endpoint, how to see the common format to configure MCP server, the tools. So MCP server currently provides only one tool, Microsoft Docs Search. This tool accepts a search string and returns up to 10 high quality content chunks, each with a maximum 500 tokens with article title, URL, and self content excerpts. Right? So this is all about MCP to MS Docs MCP server. So let's configure that. So if I go to VS Code, now in VS Code, I have already installed few set of MCP servers. Now, if you don't know how to install MCP server, search, click on search, put this angle bracket. Here you will see all the list. So if you do not see MCP list server, just type in MCP and then you will see MCP colon list servers. Click on that and here you will see all the MCP servers. Now I have already installed quite a few MCP server, one of them being Microsoft Docs as well. So Azure MCP server, Microsoft Docs, and there are few from Playwright, from few from the Python and Docker and all different types of MCP servers I've installed. Now let's install from fresh. Now before we even go into that, let me paste the URL which I've just copied. So let me paste the URL. So this is learn.microsoft.com API MCP. So backend, in the backend it uses that API. Now if you directly invoke this in a browser, it will just give you a message that this is a MCP server endpoint and cannot be accessed directly via a browser or unsupported transports like SSE. Please use a streamable HTTP transport. So you cannot use this URL directly in the browser. Let's go into the VS Code. Now here, angle bracket, MCP list servers, add a server. And this time we are going to use HTTP. If I click on HTTP, here we will type in the URL. So I'll just paste the URL, learn.microsoft.com API MCP. Press enter. Now, I will not install now. Let me first go into the Copilot, the GitHub extension over here. So as you see over here, I have this uh, open chat. So I'll just open chat this GitHub. So if you see this GitHub icon over here, now if you do not have that extension, what I would recommend is first install that. So let me show you which extension specifically I'm talking about. So if I just type in GitHub, so I have this GitHub Copilot and GitHub Copilot chat. So GitHub Copilot is your AI programmer, pair programmer, and GitHub Copilot chat is the chat features powered by Copilot. So I already have this Copilot, GitHub Copilot listed over here. Now let me click on new, and here I can ask questions, right? Ask, put a prompt, and then it will respond to me. So let me call it let me type in what is Azure subscription. So if I just type in what is Azure subscription, it will use the reference and then it will start looking into the MCP servers. Now as you see over here, I already have installed the MCP server and that has gone to the MCP server and it has referred to that content, right? So how it is possible, like, let me click on cancel over here. I just wanted to show you that this is already, I have already installed this. But if I just go to the MCP server listing over here, I can see all this MCP servers, like it has referred to MS Docs MCP server Girish Uppal. So MS Docs MCP server Girish Uppal, this is stopped. It has looked into all this different MCP server. It has identified that, okay, let me look into the MCP server, this one, and give me the response back. Now this server is not yet connected. Okay, now how did it identify? Now sometimes if you do not see the result, if I go to the config settings icon over here, I click on instructions. Now here I already have one instruction, gm docs. Now in gm docs, this is like gm docs means that I just named it my any name, like it is just an instruction, right? Now it says if a question includes a Microsoft product, service, or technology, you should leverage the learn docs mcp server. So I have provided this instruction. Now let me remove this instruction, and I've just removed the instruction. Let me go back over here, and now I will just again ask what is Azure subscription. Now it has given me this response, and Azure subscription is a logical container, but then it has taken the help of large language model. Now I'm in an agent mode over here, and this is from here I get this Copilot models options of selecting GPT 4.1, 4.0, Claude Sonnet, or maybe I can add other premium models. Now, if you see over here, this response is not coming from an MCP server. Now, why? Because I haven't provided any sort of instruction. So the first step is to install the MCP server, and second is you need to configure the instruction. So let's go back to the MCP list servers, and here I can see an option add server. I will go to HTTP. I will paste the URL. So let me see the URL. Yes, I can paste the URL over here. So let me copy that URL from a clipboard. So I'll show you the step again. So first thing, MCP list server, add a server, HTTP, and I'll copy this URL and press enter. And then it will ask me to type in the MCP server name. Now this time I will just call this Girish MS Docs MCP server. Now the moment I press enter, it will add that configuration in a config file. So let me close this window and let me show you what I meant. So here I have so many MCP servers. So if you navigate to app data roaming code user, there is a file called as MCP JSON, and mcp.json has all the MCP server which I have in the installed within the system. Now I have previously installed learn docs MCP server. So as you see, the first two items is that MCP server. What I can do, I can remove that entry. So that means that server is no more installed in my system. Okay. Now I have other MCP server. Let me see if I have any other docs MCP server. I don't see any docs MCP server, and this is the one which I just recently installed. So the moment I create an MCP server, it will in mcp.json it will write an entry with the name like Girish MS Docs MCP server, put in the URL, and then it will put the type as well. And it says it is running. You can stop, you can restart. So let me stop this MCP server. So this MCP server is stopped. I can start the MCP server from here, or I can just go over here, MCP list server, and here I can see MCP Dataverse is stopped. I'll click on MCP Dataverse and then I'll click say start the server. Once this is started, you in the terminal window, you will see it is starting the server and it has discovered some tools. Now this will be the comprehensive tool which it will discover. So I can see that it has discovered 9 tools because I have so many MCP servers listed over here. Now, once this MCP server is listed, now let's go ahead and ask this question. What is Azure subscription? Still, it has given me this result. Now, this is coming from the large language model, but we don't want that thing to happen. We want the instruction, like the response to come from this MCP server. Now, for that, what you need to do, you need to go into the setting icon over here, go to instructions. Either you can create a new instruction file or you can generate a new instruction. Let me create a new instruction file and call this as Girish MCP instructions. So I can type in whatever name I want. So I'll again show you the step. I'll click over here, go to instructions. We have this gm docs mcp instruction. So let me delete this instructions. Okay, I'll click on new instruction file, Girish MCP instruction, or whatever name you want. Select a location to create an instruction. So it's a user data folder. So let me select a user data folder. And again, I will type in the name Girish MCP instructions. And it will create that instruction MD file. The instruction file has applied to star star. And here it will say provide project context and coding guidelines that AI should follow. Now here we need to specify an instruction. So let me remove this instruction and say if questions or prompt includes Microsoft product, services, or technology, you should leverage Microsoft Docs MCP server. So in order to configure the MCP, in order to first enable those MCP server instructions, so what you need to do first, install the MS Docs MCP server, Azure Docs MS Docs MCP server, then create an instruction, and then the large language model will understand that if you get such queries related to Microsoft product, then use the MCP server for Azure for Microsoft Docs. Let me save this instruction, and now let me ask this instruction. Let me put this question again. What is Azure subscription? Now, as you see, it has not gotten to language model. It has now correctly pointed this instruction to the MS Docs MCP server. It is asking me for permission. It says, note that MCP server is a malicious conversation content may attempt to misuse code through tools, but I'm okay with that. I can allow in this session, I can allow in this workspace, or I will always allow. Let me just click on allow in this session. So I'll click on allow in this session. It will run the MCP server, and then it will put that question, it will get that output, and it will start giving me that response back. So let's see what happened. So first, it has taken the reference of that MCP server. This is all connected well. It has given me the response back. But if you see the input is of type questions in it, and the output has title and the content. Now if I scroll, it has given me some description and then the key points. Now this is about Azure question. So let me ask something about Power Pages. Okay, so let me click on plus new chat. um, Let me say how to create Power Pages site. Now again, Power Pages is a Microsoft product falling under Power Platform. It looks into the instruction. If questions include Microsoft products, services, or technology, you should leverage Microsoft Docs MCP server. And as you see over here, it has ran that query, and it has got that output, and it has got the output from learnmicrosoft.com, Power Pages getting started, and it has given me that response. To create a Power Pages site, follow this instruction. So that's it, folks. This is how you basically create that connection with Microsoft Docs MCP server. So just to reiterate, first thing, if you haven't installed that, you just need to first see whether that particular server is installed or not. If not, click on add a server, and you need to copy the URL https learnmicrosoft.com and paste that URL. So MCP list server, add server, pick up HTTP, and then paste. Now you can remember, you can create as many MCP server connection as you can. Okay, so that's not a problem. But I would not advise doing that. So because like the the large language model should be correctly pointed to a specific MCP server, because if you have so many MCP servers, large language models may not, it may not be easy process for LLM to uh, identify the MCP server pointing for that specific prompt. Once MCP server is installed, you, if the MCP server does not get skipped with the prompt you type, you have an option to configure the instruction. You can create an instruction over here. I've already created Girish MCP instruction. You can create whatever instructions name you want. And then from here, you need to specify the instruction. It says if questions include Microsoft product, service, or tech, you should leverage Microsoft Docs MCP server. Now, think about it, like if I have Microsoft Docs MCP server 5 connections, so I can individually route. So I can say if the question includes about Azure, use Microsoft Docs MCP server Girish. If questions include Microsoft Power Pages, use Girish Docs MCP server ABCD. So that's how you can leverage multiple Microsoft Docs MCP server within your instruction set. So that's it, folks. Thanks for watching.